Hi there, and thank you so much for joining me for this 5-part video series all about yoga for kindness and self-care. I'm Erica of Erica Webb Yoga and Pilates, and I am thrilled that you have joined me. So in this first video, it's just me, but over the next couple of videos, or the next 4 in fact, I've got some awesome experts coming in to chat with me about how we can incorporate more mindful movement into our lives. There's a couple of elements to that. Why would we want to? And also, how do we do it on a practical level? Because sometimes, we get really distracted by the fact that we don't have time and we don't have resources to do these things. And so through this series, my hope is that you'll come to see that there's so many really good reasons why we might want to incorporate a mindful movement practice into our lives. And I also want to give you tips and tricks for how to actually be able to go ahead and do that. Because, what's the point of having a movement practice if it's not sustainable and practical? So my goal is, on a broader scale, not just in this video series, but in general, to help women who are perhaps feeling overwhelmed and tense and disconnected to reconnect with their body, to feel like they have some autonomy over helping themselves to feel better in their own skin. And so I do that through yoga, Pilates, and somatic exercise. But underpinning all of that is this idea that we need to move in a way that offers ourselves kindness in order to reap the benefits that we're searching for. So I want to preface this video by just letting you know that when I talk about a mindful movement practice, I'm really not being specific about yoga and Pilates, because it's my belief that any practice that we engage in mindfully, whether it's yoga, Pilates, somatics, or running, weightlifting, rock climbing, any of those things can be mindful, and any of them can not be as well. So there's no practice that in and of itself is inherently mindful and kind, but the way that we approach any number of modalities is. And so whether you're a runner, whether you're a yoga practitioner or something else, I feel like you will get a lot out of this series. So coming up over the next 4 videos after this one, I have some really awesome experts joining me. I've got Kerry McGregor, who is a fellow yoga teacher, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about how a mindful movement practice can expand our perspective, and not just on the yoga mat or in the movement room, but beyond as well, back in our everyday lives. Then I've got Simone Russell, who is an occupational therapist and holistic health coach, who's going to talk to us about how we can use mindful movement to help us to kind of like deal with overwhelm and stress. Because if you're anything like me, those things creep up more often than perhaps we'd like. I'm also talking to Mel Simon, who is an amazing myotherapist. And what I'm talking to her about is how a mindful movement practice can actually change the way that we present in our bodies. So when we front up for a massage, how does it change if we're practitioners of mindful movement? Does it change the way that we present? Does it change the way that we can kind of help ourselves out of a place of tension and into a place of greater ease? And I'm also talking to Karen Bleakley. And Karen is a business owner. She's a mum of 3 kids, including twins. She is living abroad from her family, and her husband works shifts. So she's juggling a lot of stuff. And over the past couple of years, Karen's made a really conscious effort to make movement more a part of her life. And she's done that really successfully in a way that she has found to be very sustainable and very practical. And so I want to talk to her, and I am talking to her about how she does that, because I think that we can all learn some sort of interesting tips and tricks from her about how to make that more a part of our lives. And then this video with me, I'm going to talk to you about my top tips for creating a practice that is sustainable, creating a practice that is practical. Because sometimes we have really grand pie in the sky ideas about what we want these things to look like. And yet if we set our vision too kind of broad and too unachievable, then we end up exactly where we are. We don't get it done. So I want to talk to you about the tips that I've got to make that more sustainable. So why don't we just jump into the tips, shall we? So here we go. Tip number 1 is to make your goal around movement doable. Because we could aim to do an hour of yoga every morning at 5 a.m., but are you going to do it? Most likely not. Not unless that's something that you've built up incrementally over time. And so we're talking about finding ways to make this so easy that you can't say no. It's about, recognizing that 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5-minute increments of movement are actually really valuable, and they contribute to this greater vision and this greater goal to perhaps move more regularly throughout the day. And so part of the kind of secrets, I guess, behind making mindful movement a bigger part of your life and kind of like ingraining it in the very kind of essence of what you do is to set out to meet really achievable movement goals. And so that might be committing to 5 minutes a week, might be committing to 5 minutes a day or 2 minutes a day. There's got to be a palatability about this, because if we set our aims, they're this big and we're only able to bite off this much, then we end up thinking that we've failed. And the thing is that we need to get some like easy wins on the board where we can go, I aim to do this, I did it, yes. And then that encourages us to keep going. All right, tip number 2. Okay, tip number 2 is to understand your reasons why. Now, this kind of comes from this place of like should versus could. And there's this funny thing that happens when we talk about shoulds. Can you feel yourself kind of almost recoil at that idea? Anytime someone says, oh, well, you should, our barriers go up automatically, right? Like, who's going to tell you what you should do, let alone yourself? And so should is a really kind of negative place to build these desires from. And so instead, my tip is to understand your reasons why, which is really more of a could. So I could incorporate more movement into my life because I would feel reduced tension, because I would feel more capable of dealing with everyday stress, because it would help me to build strength, to build flexibility, to kind of create this connection between my body and mind that is clearer and more kind of finely tuned. And when we understand our why, and when we shift from should to could, and we know all the reasons why we could, that is a much better motivation. And, we can sit there and we can be faced with this decision of, will I choose to move in the way that I committed to, or will I not? And instead of using should and just feeling bad about that, we can instead kind of mentally tick off, well, what are all the reasons that I could? Why did I want to do this in the first place? Was it because my body is feeling really tense and I need to unwind my muscles? Is it because I'm having a hard time dealing with stress and I need to find that capacity to like chill out a little bit? It could be anything. But when we kind of sit there and we go, right, that's what I wanted, was to feel this thing or to achieve this goal, then it gets harder to say no, because we don't want to stay in that negative sort of feeling space. We want to move towards the thing that we set out to want in the first place. So that's tip number 2, know your reasons why. And then tip number 3, support. I don't know about you. I'm not the best person at receiving support. I don't ask for it very often. I don't accept it all that often either. And part of that is because I want to be this woman who can do it all on her own. I get a lot of satisfaction out of being able to achieve things by myself. And that's the truth. And you can ask anyone who knows me, they know that to be the truth. But the thing is, we have to practice this capacity that we have to be supported. And when we are in a community of people, or when we gather a couple of friends around us who perhaps have a similar goal or their eye on a similar outcome, we feel less alone. And we recognize that when we come up against blockages or barriers or things that make us go, oh, I don't know if I want this anymore, those people in that community and that network that we have to support us in our mission, they are doing the same thing. They're coming up against the same roadblocks. They're dealing with the same stuff. And so when we have that support, we're more likely to sort of, it's that herd mentality, but in a good way. We see them doing it, we think, I want that too. That's right. That's why I wanted to do this. It's not about competition. It's about lifting each other up. And so support is really important. That might come from a friend. It might come from a teacher. It might come from being a member of some sort of community or class. But when we commit to other people and we publicly say, this is what I want for me, then we put ourselves in this position of being supported, and that can take us so, so far. So they're the 3 tips. Number 1 was make it doable. Got to be doable, otherwise we won't do it. Number 2 was to know all the reasons why. Shifting from should to could and understanding what those coulds are. That's going to drive us in that direction in a really kind way. And number 3 was to get support. Surround yourself with people or one person or a couple of people who understand what it is that you want for yourself. And then that's going to help you kind of keep going, even when it feels a little bit tricky. So I hope that those 3 tips are really helpful for you. My personal journey with mindful movement has been one that's gone over many, many years. But for me, it has become this thing that is a habit. Now, I'm not going to tell you lies. My habit is not getting up at 5 a.m. every morning and knocking out an hour of yoga. It doesn't look like that, especially not in this season of my life with 2 young kids. Although they're not as young as I remember them being, they seem to have gotten a lot older really quickly. But it has become such an integral part of who I am as a person to move regularly that it's almost not a question anymore. And that doesn't mean that I don't go days sometimes without moving in a mindful way, but it means that anytime I come up against something and I think, gosh, I'm feeling really tense today, I've got a bag of tools essentially that I can draw upon to help myself out of that position, or at least, bolster myself up. And this is what I try to offer to my students, is this idea that we're not always at the mercy of our body, because sometimes it can feel like that, right? Like we notice all of the things that are perhaps going wrong. We notice the tension that we're holding in our shoulders. We notice the knots in our tummy or the ache in our back. And we can kind of tend to outsource the care of that, thinking, well, there's nothing I can do until I get in to see my massage therapist or my osteo or my chiro or my doctor, whatever it is that we do. And yet we have got access to so much information about ourselves. We have got so much capacity to shift the way that we feel. But we have to understand and we have to learn how to trust ourselves. And we have to learn how we respond to those tools that we have in our toolbox. So we try things and we see, if I move my body in this way, or if I do this certain practice, this certain pose, does it shift how I feel towards the way that I want to feel? And we start to develop this capacity to move habitually. So it becomes like our first port of call when we need a little bit of support. And that might look different for you. Perhaps you are the type of person who really needs that sort of regimental schedule. And so perhaps every Wednesday morning you do your practice, or every Thursday night you roll out your mat, or whatever it is. We really just want to build this into our lives as a non-negotiable, but in a kind way. So it's not a should, but an option, possibility to help us expand outside of this kind of narrow view that we might have of ourselves into something that is full of possibility, full of expansiveness, and recognizes that like our bodies are darn clever. Like they are so smart, and so are you. And so you have this capacity to shift the way that you feel. And so I'm going to wrap us up for this first video in the 5-part series. I hope you will join me for the next 4 videos where I'm talking to these awesome experts who are going to give you more practical tips, more reasons why. And you're going to love it, because these are all women who are dealing with the same stuff. We're all busy. We all have so many multiple competing priorities. But the thing is, we can create time for ourselves. We can create space when we commit to looking after ourselves. And I rejected that notion for such a long time. I resisted that notion for years because it felt uncomfortable to look after myself. I wanted to be the martyr, genuinely. But from that place, I had zero to give, absolutely nothing. And so I've really come to learn as I've gotten a bit older that I can only be the person that I want to be in this lifetime. I can only serve in the way that I want to serve. I can only parent in the way that I want to parent, and be a friend and a partner and all of these things in the way that I want to, if I show up for myself. And that doesn't mean that I don't fall off the wagon and find myself at the bottom of the pile again. But it's recognizing that we have to keep reprioritizing, refilling our own cup, because as often as we hear that idea, as often as we are fed that information that you have to fit your own oxygen mask first, that you have to fill your own cup to be able to fill others, we kind of, we give it like, yeah, that's great. Yep, I got it. But we never, embody it. And we have to start to do that if we truly want to live out what that means. Now, I want to be fully transparent with you. At the end of this 5-part video series, I am opening the doors to the Mindful Movement Virtual Studio. And that is my online yoga, Pilates, and somatic exercise studio. It's my baby. I adore it. And this studio was really created so that I could help other women fit a mindful movement practice into their lives from the comfort of their own home or wherever it is that they find themselves on any given day, and fit it into the times that suit them, fit it in a way that doesn't require them to go hunting around for the right studio, the right teacher. Or perhaps you've got a great teacher, you've got a beautiful studio, but you want to find a way to create more of that in your life, more movement, more dedication to it, I suppose, for want of a better word, even though it's not a word that I love. But this is why the studio was created. And so inside of the virtual studio, what you'll find is a library full of classes. And these classes combine yoga, Pilates, and somatic exercise to help you build strength, flexibility, but most of all, to foster self-kindness. Because it's my belief that when we approach our mindful movement practice from this place of kindness, we have got so much more capacity to actually create change in ourselves, the change that we want to see, whether that be physical change, emotional change, whatever it is. Finding that place of compassion, curiosity, and kindness is what will get us from here to there. And so if that is something that is of interest to you, the doors to the virtual studio will be opening on Sunday, the 8th of March. They're only going to be open for 1 week. So they'll be open until the 15th of March, which is also a Sunday, so 1 full week, and then they close. And the reason that they close is because once the doors are closed, I really like to focus on my members, really providing the support that you need to be able to transform your movement practice into something that feels kind, sustainable, and practical. And so if that's of interest, head to www.ericawebyoga.com.au/virtual studio, and you'll find a lot more information there so that you can have a little think, is this right for me? There's even a section there saying this maybe isn't right for you if XYZ, because it's not for everybody. But if you are looking for a way to help support you in building a practice, then this could be the resource that you're looking for. I'd love to see you on the inside, and if you've got questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can find me at erica@ericawebyoga.com.au. Enjoy the rest of the series, and I'll talk to you soon.